I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where and when in the world you're connecting. It's always so wonderful to be able to share this time together. And today, my presentation is entitled Transient Life, and of course that's day 15 of the Tao of Joy Every Day. And the subtitle for this presentation I've chosen is Making Every Moment Count. So in putting this presentation together, as I often do, Wendy always, usually Friday evening, we finally get to spend some time together. She'll ask me, well, what are you going to talk about on Sunday? And, I told her I hadn't even looked yet at, I hadn't looked ahead. So she was driving. We had gone out, and we were coming home somewhat late. We sort of had a little bit of a date night Friday. And I started talking about, I looked it up and I read the chapter, day 15, to her. And I told her it was going to be on the subject of how life is transient. And one of the wonderful things about Wendy is she always teaches me so much, because Wendy recently lost, a couple of months ago, or it may have even been less than that, lost a childhood friend of hers that she'd known since she was school age, and who was very close to her when she was young. And he lived on the other side of the country, so she connected with him occasionally, but she got word a couple of months ago that he had taken ill, and he was a fairly young person, as he was in his early 40s, and he just died a couple of months ago. And she talked about how that experience of losing someone from her generation, it's not the first time she lost someone from her generation, but I think it was probably someone who was very close to her that she lost, that was in her generation. I think it sort of it shook her up a little, and she talked about that. And that's the thing about when we encounter death, it really makes us think about life, and it makes us realize just how precious a gift it is. And that's kind of why I chose the subtitle, Making Every Moment Count. And sometimes it's encounters with death that really bring it to the foreground for us. And I've had in my life a lot of experience with death, actually. And I'll try to talk about that a little bit, because it's one of those things that helped me learn just how precious life is and how much it is to be cherished. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it here. So, whoops, let me go here. There we go. Okay. So I want to start off by talking about what I like to call the illusion of permanence. And, it is absolutely true that life is fleeting. If you look at it in terms of cosmology, we know that nothing in the world lasts forever, not even this observable universe of ours that we know so much about, though we have a lot to learn about it. But, I mean, something as big as this universe, the observable universe we find ourselves in, that by the lights of brilliant physicists is 13.7 billion years old. And yet, I believe the current cosmology, and I think Derek, who knows quite a lot about this stuff, can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the current cosmology is that the universe is flat and eternal and will likely go on forever. However, in a practical sense, this universe we find ourselves in will end up cold, empty, and dark. So in a sense, even this universe that is so vast may not necessarily go on forever. And of course, also in current cosmology, there's the idea of multiverse. It's interesting to me that from 3 different areas of physics, there is a conclusion that it's likely we're living in a multiverse, that we're just one of possibly infinite universes. And so, and you wonder then, well, of those universes, are they going to eventually become cold, empty, and dark, and then, other universes are created, but they're separate. So it is an interesting idea that the fact that it appears really that nothing lasts forever. And in thinking about this, and this is why I put up the yin-yang symbol and put up permanent and transient, because as I was thinking about it, I was trying to think of something that could really be permanent. And really, there's nothing on the earth, which is the thing that, let's face it, we're all most familiar with. There's nothing you can think of that's going to last forever. It's a mathematical certainty. I mean, even this planet, we know its life will be relatively short. I think our sun is something like middle age, and so I think it's something like another 4 billion years. Our sun will be done, and so will this solar system. And so nothing really lasts forever. And it sort of begged the question for me, well, why is there even an idea of permanence? And I guess in thinking about it, really the only thing I can say, and my allusion to this is really a matter of faith, because like Bill was speaking about reincarnation and so forth, you can't really prove these things in any empirical way. It is a matter of faith and belief. But to me, I think the only thing that's permanent is our true selves, or if you call it a soul, or that sacred essence within each of us. I think that's the thing that's forever, and maybe possibly the only thing that's forever. And again, that is a matter of faith. But I think what happens to us when we find ourselves locked inside time and space in this body that we are given, or that we acquired through however means we got it, we have this feeling that even though we know fundamentally that death awaits us all, you don't necessarily have that in the foreground of your mind as you're living your life. And in a way, we do have this illusion of permanence. We do feel like we're just going to go on and on and on. And maybe in some degree we will, in the sense that our true self can go on. But that this life, this body that we find ourselves in will end. We will all die eventually one day. Just like every other thing you can think of on this planet, nothing lasts forever, including us. And as Bill often says, give it on average 70, 75 years, we're all going to find out. The true transience of life will be realized. And you think about, cosmic time. I mean, the truth is, even though it may not seem like it, but our time on this earth, when you think of it in the context of 13.7 billion years, is just a tiny, tiny fraction. And yet, there are days when it seems like, boy, this day is taking a long time to end, right? I'm sure we've all had days like that, where there may be challenging days where the clock doesn't seem to run out on them for some reason. So, but the reality of it is that time marches forward, and that our mind often colors our perceptions of what's going on. Now, this illusion of permanence can often be shattered. And what I've put up here in this slide is 2 things. One is a picture of gravestones at a cemetery. And the other is a specific gravestone. That happens to be the gravestone of my first child from my first marriage. And as you can see from the dates on that, he lived exactly 5 months to the day. And it's in confronting death often that we're reminded, just as Wendy was when her friend passed, of the transience of life. And because of that transience, we really do have to appreciate and not take for granted every moment that we have, because nothing is guaranteed. We don't know that, and we'll be here a year from now, or a month from now, or a day from now, or even a moment from now. Things can literally change that fast, and we don't know. And I know for me, as I said earlier, I've experienced a lot of death in my life. When I was 12, my father passed away. And 3 years later, when I was 16, my mother died of cancer. And those deaths were difficult, and I think were tough times to go through, but both times were tough to go through. However, the thing about those is, in thinking about it, I think about a story Derek once told, and that's that there was a wise person who was going to reveal a painting with a lesson for everyone. And the day comes, and there's great anticipation of what this teaching is going to be, and he unveils the painting. And what the painting says is, it says, grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. And everyone looks at it and goes, what does that mean? That just sounds depressing. What teaching is that? But then the wise person who put that together explains that, well, if you think about it, that's the natural order. The grandfather should die first, then the father, then the son. When things transpire and fall out of that order, that's when you have really true tragedy. And so in losing my parents, even though I was young, at the very least, it did follow the natural order. You are supposed to outlive your parents. It would have been nice to have them around a little longer, but that just wasn't in the cards. However, in losing my first child, that was really tough to come to grips with, because it was outside the natural order. And it really was a deep reminder of just how transient life is. And it took me a long time to appreciate the lesson that it taught me, because a lot of it was just getting through the depression and the loss. But there is something, the reason why I put his grave marker on here is because he and I shared the same name, except for the fact that I don't have a middle name. He had two. And so, but I remember always thinking, because when he first died, my first wife and I would, for the first 2 years, we would go to the grave every week and put up little fences and pinwheels and flowers. And on Thursday, we'd come every Thursday and take them down, and come every Friday and put them back up, because that's when they mowed the grounds. And it's interesting, we met a lot of people also going through that and doing that, who were grieving the loss of children, because in this particular cemetery, there's a space dedicated to children, and that's where my son was buried. But there was something about seeing my own name on a tombstone that really sort of drove the point home, and it's a little unsettling. And the reason why it's unsettling is because it shatters the illusion that we'd all comfortably like to hold on to, that somehow we are going to live a real long time. So the shattering of this illusion is what can wake us up to the preciousness of life and cause us to really appreciate it in a way that we might not have otherwise. And this can happen in different ways. I mean, often if you live long enough, sooner or later you'll lose someone from your generation. or even if it's someone who's not from your generation, just the loss of someone you know can cause you to confront the transience of life. And the lesson to be learned from appreciating the transience of life is just how precious a gift it is. And it's in living in the moment and appreciating every moment, because like I said, life isn't to be taken for granted. We don't know when it's going to end. Nothing is certain, not even the next breath. And so that's why living in the moment is so important, to really be present and to really appreciate and enjoy your life. And truly, you know, as the Buddha discovered, the joy of life really is in the moment before us. And so the next thing I want to do here, my next slide, is a quote from the Dalai Lama that I wanted to share with you. So the Dalai Lama, when asked what surprised him most about humanity, this is what he said. Man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money, then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health, and then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present, the result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never going to die, and then dies having never really lived. And this quote really does sort of typify the message that I wanted to share with you today, and that's that we have to appreciate every moment. We have to be present in every moment and appreciate every moment. And so when I first decided that I wanted to give these presentations, I wanted to do my best to share some practical advice on things that have helped me over the years. And one of the things is situational awareness and being in the moment. And I think all of us find ourselves out of focus and out of the moment from time to time. I think that's quite a natural thing that happens. And I've discovered a couple of things that really help me. The first one I'm going to do is something that's sort of open to everyone, and that's this. When I find myself fretting too much about the future, or maybe fretting about something that's transpired in the past, what I'll often do as a technique to bring myself back to the moment is I'll literally narrate my life. Like I'll narrate what's going on not out loud, but internally. And it really does sort of help me come back to the focus of the actual moment before me. So if you find yourself out of focus and out of the moment, that might be a technique you might want to try and see if it works for you. Now, obviously, we're unique. It may not work for everyone, but it might be worth a shot. The other thing that I'll share with you is the gift of the Iguan Tao initiation itself was a huge help to me, because one of the gifts of Tao initiation is the three treasures. And for those of you who aren't initiated or haven't been initiated, I invite you to check out what Derek's put together on the three treasures on Taoism.net. I don't believe it's on the news site, so you have to go to the web links and go to the original truedao.org site, and then click on Iguan Tao, and when you do that on the right, you'll see a link to the three treasures where Derek, not specifically, but generally explains the three treasures. And I have found that those three treasures, in practicing them, really do help bring my focus back to the moment. And of course, the other practice that helps me with that as well is a commitment to daily meditation. Setting aside that time just to allow things to be quiet and relaxed. Those things can be very helpful in experiencing the moment before us. It's one of the benefits of the initiation process. And I think that everyone who's gone through it undoubtedly knows what I'm talking about. Because after you're initiated, for me it was Derek, but I imagine it depends on where and when you're initiated, but Derek goes over the three treasures specifically. And I've been fortunate enough because, and sometimes it's hard sort of to pick them up all at once necessarily. And I've been lucky in that I think a couple of weeks after I was first initiated, I attended the other Alex's initiation ceremony. And so I got a review of the treasures when Derek explained them again for him. And then, of course, when Wendy got initiated, which was more recently, another review of them. And then it's great to hear Derek's explanation of them. And in having heard them 3 times now, I always pick up new insight each time. And, well, I hope everyone who feels, let's say, linking back to what Bill talked about, the karmic affinity of the pull toward ego and Tao, that you might get in touch with Derek or Bill, or Ed too, if you're in Valencia, where he has the wonderful Akata Center. Might find out about how to go about becoming initiated, if that's something that speaks to you, that if you feel a tug towards that tug that Bill talked about. And it is funny, you know, in cultivating, I've noticed over the years that, and this is more recently, but that it's important to look for patterns. And when you look for them, often you find them. And sometimes I have this realization that these patterns were always there screaming out to me, but I just wasn't paying attention. And it is sort of in being in the moment and looking for those patterns and finding them that you gain these insights that I have to say are faith-based, because it's not like I can take this into a lab and go, here's what I experienced, and this proves to me that this is that way. Well, it proves it to me, but I can't expect it that it will prove to anyone. It'll prove it to anyone else. But I can tell you that striving to be in the moment is very helpful in appreciating all that life has to offer, good and bad. I think in some ways being in the moment even helps you through the bad times, the challenges. I think you get more out of them when you're in that moment. Okay, so I'm going to start to sum it up now. It is often easy to forget that the arrow of time marches forward, constantly bringing us ever closer to the end of our lives with every passing moment. We often get caught up in the illusion of permanence, forgetting that there are no guarantees for the precious life before us, not for a next year, a next month, a next day, or even a next moment. That is why we have to make the most of every moment as it unfolds. There are times when an encounter with mortality through the loss of someone we know, or a moment of clarity when we become aware that our life here in this world could end at any moment. Those things force us to evaluate the impermanent nature of our lives. And it's that impermanence that I think you can use as inspiration for living each moment and being present in each moment. A commitment to daily meditation can help increase our mindful awareness of each moment of our lives. Also, in moments when we feel that our focus is moving away from the present moment, we can employ the 3 treasures of the ego and Tao to help us return to the present moment. So for those of us who have been initiated, I invite you to take advantage of those gifts that you received during initiation, as it can be tremendously helpful in coming back and back to the focus of what life is all about. It's one of the great things about the Tao the thing that obviously I had, as Bill said, a karmic affinity for. If I hadn't, I don't think I ever would have made my way to the temple, into initiation, and to doing my best to cultivate the Tao teachings every moment of my life. I'm so grateful for having found those gifts and those treasures. It's made such a difference in my life. Okay, so I want to end the presentation with, as always, with the book recommendation, The Tao of Joy Every Day, a great book to use daily to help one study and learn the Tao teachings and put them into action. So there it was, Transient Life, Day 15, Making Every Moment Count. Thank you all for allowing me to speak with you today. I hope I said something that was of use, and I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday.
Alex, this was great. Thank you so much. I think in general, it is a useful cultivational technique for one to look ahead, knowing that, your demise, your departure from this plane of existence is somewhere out there in the future, to get a sense of that and realize that the timing is going to be uncertain. That's a powerful reminder to live today, to seize the moment, to have that present moment awareness, at all times.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜班一鞠躬。Well done, everybody. Thank you so much.